This episode, we get to talk with Geo Derice. Now, this guy is the book Doula. You heard that right, the book Doula. He helps people not only write their first books, but also future, just to make sure that they're authoring, even if they're self-publishing. People think that you're with a large publishing house. Now, I love this conversation because we dive into marketing. We talk about common misconceptions of authoring a book. And honestly, I'm ready to start my next one right now because of my discussion with him. So if you want to learn about publishing your book, the first one, or just how to make it excellent, check out this episode with Geo Derice. Basically, will you just give us, an overview, Geo, of what you do and how you help others?
Yeah, man. So I'm the founder of a program called First Book Done. Basically, I help speakers, coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs write and self-publish their first book and make sure that it's done in a way where no one ever knew you self-published it, right? Because there's this stigma of self-publishing where like, oh, you self-published? Oh, you got a GED book. Oh, that's cool, right? But I'm talking about publishing it in a way where people are like, who's your publisher? Like there's no way you could have humanly been able to do this on your own. And so I help them with that so that they are able to go ahead and make an income doing that. And also being able to make an impact. So been doing that for about the last 4 years. Love it. Love being able to go and empower speakers, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs to be able to level up their businesses.
That's cool. What do you think? I'm curious, when do you think someone's ready to start writing a book?
Sheesh, when are you ready to, when do you want to start making money? Like that, like that's probably what, that would be the part where I would say that. And the reason why I bring that up is because for many speakers or coaches or whatever, when you're starting out, you normally don't have a product sometimes to go ahead and sell. So you could go and speak. And one of the things that I found is some people, they go and try to speak and the people can't afford to pay them a speaking fee. But if they had a book, they would be able to go and sell and have that fall in line with the materials line items. So they're like, I've had many times when someone says, we can't pay you to go speak at the graduation. I'm like, well, are you giving away a graduation gift? And they're like, yeah, we're giving pens. And I'm like, would it be cool to give them a book instead? And they're like, well, that's way more valuable than a pen with the school name on it that they're going to throw away by the end of the night. Yeah. And so they'll say, well, how many books do you have? And I would say, well, how many students do you have? And they'll be like, I got 150 students. Well, I say, I got 150 books, right? And what ended up being like an engagement that what I would have probably said no to because I didn't get paid now becomes 150 books times $10 to $15 that now makes me close to $3,000 for a graduation speech that's 5 minutes long.
Yeah, wow.
Right.
That's a
and
good
so,
deal, right?
Yeah, I'll do that all day. And so I think that's when I said, when someone says, well, when should I write a book? I think you should already start thinking about it. And if you are a speaker or you are a coach, you probably have a talk that you do, a philosophy that you have that you can easily replicate in your book, lay it out there so that people, when they go and say, hey, I had an amazing time with you, Jake. How do I go and repeat this or revisit this? They can have Jake in their pocket, Jake on their bookshelf with the book.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think for mine, I mean, what it's so nice for is too, when you do go and you speak to someone and even just handing them a copy of your book, it makes you a little bit more memorable. And they think like you gave them this priceless item is like, hey, the author of this book gave it to me. They maybe even ask you to sign it.
Yeah.
So you're this celebrity because you gave them something that is just from you. And they got to have you speak, they got your autograph, and they're going to keep that. And that's promotion that sits in their office 365 days a year.
Oh my gosh. Bro, you have no idea. You have no idea how many times I've seen somebody hold my book in the train station and post it online. And I could go and literally take that and say, most people are concerned with young people reading at all. Well, what would it look like if I told you that my book was read on the train station where everyone can see that young person's reading? Like, why wouldn't they? That's not, they're like, well, what's in your book? Because that's not common, but they're promoting my stuff for me. I had a contest, Jake, where I had a group of students who read my book. And I said, I want y'all to film a commercial at the end of this book. After you read, I want you to film a commercial. And my book is called The Thirst is Real. One of the students that I taught this, we went through the book with, he literally took a bottle of water, threw it on his head, and said, man, this book is exactly like quenching my thirst. And so he literally create this commercial for me that who creates a commercial for the business card you handed them? Right? Like, who's gonna say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna do a commercial for your business card. It's such a great business card. But a book it's almost like an event on paper, an experience on paper. And so that form of packaging your information is going to change the game for you. It's going to change your branding. It's going to elevate your credibility and authority in the market space. So I could talk about that all day long, but I think it's one of the greatest investments in your business is to be able to go and have something that you could productize your information through a book.
Yes. And it's so cool too, because the book, maybe someone's not ready to purchase your speaking package, but you can send them a book, they read it, and then they're sold. Or vice versa. You came and you spoke to their audience and they love you so much, they're going to buy 25 copies or 200 copies of your book. So it's just a way just to not leave money on the table as well.
It's funny you said that phrase, because that's literally what I tell speakers and coaches. Like if you're, in business, there's the initial sell where they always say the toughest customer to get is the first one. Mm-hmm. And the best customer is to just the person who's already opened up their wallet, right? So it's easier to tell someone whose wallet is already open, can I get that $5 bill too? The hardest part is getting them to open it. Now, for them to go and reach and grab another $1, that's not as hard. And so when they're like, hey, yes, Jake, we'll bring you in to speak. And then you say, oh, by the way, could we go and get 50 copies of the book so that we can go and incentivize those to come in attendance? The first 50 will get an autographed copy. All of a sudden, they're like, well, we actually was wondering, how do we incentivize them? You have a book, and now all of a sudden, this $1,500 engagement just got boosted to $2,000 with just a $50 book that costs me $3 per copy, but I'm charging them $15. So now I'm going 50 times 12, and I'm like, I just made $600 more because I have a book and I position it to solve another problem that the client has. And so it's like, it's a win-win. Like, they're happy to not give another pen. They're happy to be able to say, hey, we brought Jake, but because we gave a free book to the first 50 people, we now know 50 people is coming versus we brought in Jake for $2,000, $3,000 and 10 people showed up, and now we're paying $50 to $500 a head for having him come through.
Yes, dude. And since we're in the education space, you and I both, speak in that space, is that they often don't have corporate sized budgets. If they do, it's once a year. So for a non-celebrity like us to come in there and double our speaking fee or add $500 to $1,000 is fantastic at something we did already. We already leveraged our story and our time and our work to do that. It's just a smart move. I'm not just talking with you. I'm like ready to start my next book.
You're leaving, like you said, you're leaving money on the table. And again, it's like, you go somewhere, like let's say Las Vegas, and they always say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But when we're doing these engagements, they don't want the party to end. They want it to continue. And normally, I don't know, you've heard this before, but they always are like, well, what are you leaving for us? Sometimes the greatest frustration that people have is that you created an experience that they can't replicate. And they can't afford you to replicate it either. Like, they can't say, Jake, come back every week, right? Right. But what they can do is listen to Jake for 45 minutes and then go through a chapter a week going through what Jake just did in 45 minutes, which was ignite them. So they were like, yo, man, I love this. All right, well, you loved it so much. We're going to go through the next 12 weeks, once a week, just talking through his book. And then you could come back at the end and just do another thing virtually. And now what was probably like $2-3 grand becomes $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10,000 because you did 2 engagements, and you automatically just slide in the second engagement as a virtual follow-up once they finish going through the book. So it's like, again, it's a way to extend your product line so you can go kind of like Apple, who has, and say, hey, get the AirPods for like $199, and then get your iPad for $800, and then get the MacBook Pro for like $2,000, and then go get the computer too on top of it for another $3, $4, $5 grand, right? And it's like, we can do that too even if we're not celebrities. I don't want someone who's listening to this and say, well, this is cool for you, but I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a New York Times bestseller. And I want to just encourage everyone who's listening to us right now that it actually is not a requirement for you to be a bestseller in order for you to go and monetize your business and leverage a book to help make you more money and ultimately make a greater impact, because the more time they spend with you, the better they're going to be for it.
Absolutely. And I'll just close this thought out and we'll move on to something next by saying that I've had experiences where people have just said, we have this much budget to spend. So I've already purchased something from you. And they said, we actually have to spend this much more. What do you have? And if you don't have that book or that curriculum or a video series of something else, then it's just like you can see the money flash from your account where you could have had it. So like that's maybe something also too in that education space, but even corporate accounts, they have line items they have to spend. So we've hit it on the head that like you
better write your book.
There.
Yeah, the opportunity. There's a quote that says the most expensive thing in life is a missed opportunity. Wow. And the worst thing in the world is, I always tell people all the time, you never miss what you didn't have, right? But when you know you could have made an additional $1,000 to $2,000 for the same trip, and you just see, I want you to think about everyone who's listening to me, that there's negative $500 to $2,000 that just left your account only because you didn't have the product available. Like I've had people who've never read the book and said, oh, you have one? Bring it along. They didn't read it. They already knew and liked, liked, and trust me already. So they know and like and trust the book as well. So my book just gets to come along for the ride. I already co-signed it. And so I just don't want people to just realize that you're leaving money on the table. And also one of the things with speakers, consultants, if you're doing one-on-one stuff, is you get burnout. And you get burnout because of how many days you had to leave. But if I can go and make $2,000 more in an engagement, that's maybe one less speech I have to do. And I'm not saying you don't want to necessarily do more speeches, but as you get older, you start developing family and all that stuff, this is no longer sexy to be on the road 150 days a year.
Yeah.
Right? You want to try to figure out, how do I make this 75? And one of the ways to make that 150, 75 is to create a product that your client would already see as a high value item that doesn't cost you a lot of money to produce. And a book is one of those things.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're called the book doula, right?
Yeah.
So like if somebody wants to write a book, you can get it from them and bring it to fruition, and that book is going to be born. So your program, like First Book Done, is what's the farthest you've taken somebody from, let's say, like the beginning point? Like maybe they didn't even have an idea, or I don't know. Like, what do you find most of your customers are? And where can you help people? And like, how does that process work?
No, great question. So I've found people who've gone from, I never wanted to write a book before. Never. They weren't the, hey, you know, when I was 3 years old, I knew I wanted to be an author. And I'll tell you this. If you tell me that at 3 years old, you wanted to write a book and you want to work with me, I am more than likely going to tell you no. Now, you might be looking at me and saying, what? Like you would want to work with that person? No, I don't. And here's why. At 3 years old, what book did you read that made you want to become an author? Clifford the Big Red Dog? I don't know how to write that book. I can't help you. I specifically work with speakers, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs who want to position their information, their knowledge, and their wisdom and turn that into a product. If you want to write Clifford the Big Red Dog, I'm not saying it's not possible. Dr. Seuss has sold a lot of books. I'm just not the guy for you, right? So I've had people who've like said, Geo, I had no intentions to ever write a book, but I need to go and be able to establish myself and leapfrog the process of needing to be looked at as an authority, to be able to have the personal branding that will help me to call for certain fees for my work, and to feel like I have the credibility to back it up without having to go and get 75 degrees and stuff like that, right? And so I've had people who've done that, and literally one of our students in the First Book Done program literally just did this. Her book came out, what are we, in August at the time of recording this? So she came out with a book in July. She went to a conference that had 1,000 people. She told me, Geo, I sold 100 copies of my book in like 5 hours. Workbooks were sold, coffee mugs about her book was sold. She's probably sold about over 200 copies of her book in like a week and a half. And this was someone who had no intentions of ever wanting to write a book. She did not have a word written. We worked together through the First Book Done program, and we went from 0 to like 25,000 words. She was able to identify her framework. She now has a coaching program that she's building on the back end of it as well. She's creating workbooks and journals to complement the book that she has so that she can get somebody to go from paying $20 to paying $297 for the same information, just repurposed. So that's one example, right?
Yeah.
And then we've had others who's like, gee, I've been sitting on this book for the last 10 years. I've been told to write it. I am known as the industry leader, but I'm not being paid like one because I don't have a product that industry leader would have, which is a book. And so he went ahead and created his book. And this is the one who sold thousands of copies of his book, became an Amazon bestseller. It was really just helping him get his information, but organize it in a format that would be easy to read. Because here's one of the things I want everyone to listen to understand. Maya Angelou had this great quote where she said, hard writing equals easy reading. Hard writing equals easy reading. And most of the time we think, well, if my book is easy, then people are going to think that it's not good. Like it's just like third grade level stuff. Well, not to get political, but when Donald Trump was doing his speeches, they analyzed his speech and they were saying it was at like a third or fourth grade level, and people understood it enough to vote for him. So I just want to let you know, don't overcomplicate by, oh my gosh, it's easy to read, because easy to read books get finished. Hard to read books where I got to pull out the Oxford Dictionary or go and find a Latin root of the word because you decided to go and write a whole book of SAT words, that book doesn't get finished. And so I help authors to be able to go and take their complex ideas and make it simple enough. And it's only by making it simple that you can turn it around into courses, that you can turn it around into retreats, into date live events by doing that. And we do that all through the First Book Done program. We do that with positioning your book to sell versus just writing the book that you feel like writing, because the philosophy that I teach is your book is a service. It ain't about you. If it was about you, then you would buy the 10,000 copies you hope to sell. But if it's about needing others to go ahead and buy it, then you need to go and think about the others and ensure that your book is addressing the concerns, the things that keep those people up at night, and to be able to go and show them that your book is the bridge that connects them from where they are to where they would like to be.
Okay. Wow. So I think at this point, we've kind of, if I could sum up what we've said, is that we've established like the importance in marketing and building your credibility and building another stream of impact and income. And just like the possibilities that lay there. And if you could, maybe give us some of your top tips, like when you take a student through your program, what are some of the things that you can tease to us and share that people are saying, wow, I love your program because you taught me this. And then can you share that with us? What are those things?
Only because it's Jake. There was somebody else I would charge you for this. I'm gonna give it to you guys. Number one is we teach this framework of the 3 W's. And the 3 W's is what I believe will set your book up for success. Again, a lot of people write books that never make any money and make no impact. If you focus on these 3 W's, you will write a book that impacts people and puts money in your pocket. And the 3 W's is, number one, you need to know who are you writing the book for. And the reason why you want to know who you're writing the book for is because you do not want to write a beef book and sell it to vegans. You need to know who you're talking to, because based on where they are is where I'm going to deliver the information. The best way to go and show people you care about them is to meet them where they are. And so when you know who they are, you're able to understand, where are they? What are the things that they've already tried? Where is it that they would like to go? And what are the barriers that's stopping them from getting there? When you speak to that in the beginning, I tell people, put that in your introduction. You let people do this thing that we see in late night infomercials, where late at night, at midnight, you start to see the commercial come on and they say, are you hungry? And you start nodding your head. And you go and say, do you have a headache? And you start nodding your head. Do you have problems sleeping at night? Well, of course, I'm watching the commercial at 1 o'clock in the morning. So yes, I'm hungry. I got the munchies. I have a headache and I have problems sleeping. And what they're doing is getting you to nod your head 3 times so that by the time they say the 4th thing, which is you need whatever the product is, you go, mm-hmm. And so we can do that with our introductions as well by identifying who the person actually is. Talk about who they are. I know what you want. I know why you want it. And I know why you haven't gotten it yet. And when you do that in the introduction, you've bought them for the rest of the book. They're literally like, how did Jake know that about me? And anytime you're able to enter the conversation in the mind of the reader, you automatically build know, like, and trust immediately for them. So that's the first thing, right? Then we talk about the what. Like, what is your book actually about? And what is it going to do for the reader? Right? So you're not writing just for pleasure. You're writing to go and help someone go from pain to whatever their pleasure is. And so we want to make sure that we say that up front. This is not a magic trick where you kind of hold it back. I'm talking about nonfiction. If you're writing fiction, you kind of want to go and have a little bit of mystery. In nonfiction, it ain't no need for no mystery. Tell me what I'm going to get from the door because I'm going to judge your book from the cover and the introduction. I may never make it to chapter 2. So you saving your best stuff for chapter 2, they're not getting there. Put that stuff in the beginning, right? So we talk about the what, and then the last thing is why. Why should someone read this book right now? There's so many books out there. Can you tell me why is it necessary? Why is it already too late for me to not have applied the information that's inside of this book? And also, why are you the person that is best suited to talk about this? And this is an opportunity for you to overcome that imposter syndrome that you have, where you think like, hey, who am I to go ahead and write a book? But I would argue that there's something unique about your experience that is actually, if you lean into it instead of hiding it, will make people really understand why you and only you could have written this book.
That's amazing that when you were explaining this, that I'm going through the last couple books that I read and I'm like, wait, I saw that in the first, and I was excited to read it. Yeah. And then knowing the ones that I wasn't excited to read it, like I'm thinking of a book in particular.
Yeah.
And I was like, they didn't explain the what. Like they jumped in and I wasn't bought in and I stopped reading that book. And so it's really cool to learn this and then see it in reverse, like in my mind and be like, oh, Geo's right.
Listen, everything that I'm sharing with you, I'm an avid reader, right? So everything I'm sharing with you is because I read books with the mentality of what are they doing to me? I'm not just reading for the information. I'm reading for the art of it. I'm like, what did they strategically do to hypnotize me to finish this book? And so everything I'm sharing is like looking at it and say, oh, snap, look how they hooked me. Look how they not only hooked me, but they showed me where we were going. I'm telling you right now, people don't like reading nonfiction books and going on joyrides. Joyrides is, hey, where are we going? We ain't going nowhere. We're just going for a ride. No one wants to go for a read. They need to know why are they reading. And so when we go and think of playing this magic, hey, guess what's behind my back? No one wants to guess what's behind the back because I got 10 other books that I'm supposed to be reading. I need you to tell me why your book is the one that I need to grab and not put down until I finish it. And so when you think about that stuff, what you were saying about, hey, I got a couple of books that just didn't hook me, what they assumed is they saved the best for last. They thought that you had infinite amount of time. They thought that, hey, Jake just went out to the woods and he's camping and he's just going to read my book just for the sake of. And I need you to understand that I could read a book worth of content just going on Instagram in a day. So you're competing not just against the books that's in Amazon, but you're competing against anywhere that there's words. That means websites, social media posts, blogs, forums, Facebook, text messaging, WhatsApp. That's who you're competing with. And so if you're competing with that, you can't take for granted that somebody's going to be bought in. And the thing that I hate for a lot of people to go through is to feel like you wrote this whole book. And I compare it to like metaphorically, you're the conductor of a train and you set all aboard. And then when you arrive at the final destination, you realize nobody boarded the train at all. And that's painful to know that you've given your blood, sweat, and tears towards writing something that you hope would impact somebody only to feel like it did not do that. And I'm telling you, you're doing yourself a disservice and your reader a disservice if you did not own that stuff up front. So the 3 W's I definitely harp on tremendously in the First Book Done course because it literally is the thing that makes this stuff different. My mentor told me this, Jake. He said that hit songs are marketed, not written. And the way that I go and approach First Book Done is I come from a 10-year background in marketing. So I'm not the person who sat down in literature class for 4 years and learned how to write. What I did was I took 10 years of marketing experience and said, how do I sell my book from the cover to the introduction? Like, I'm literally selling you on flipping the next page. I'm selling you on flipping to the next chapter. I'm selling you on finishing the book. I'm constantly selling you because I'm applying this marketing thing because I want your book to sell. I don't want you to have to go and explain what your book is, to someone and like, hey, well, you just didn't understand it. Well, I didn't understand it because you didn't explain it.
Yeah, that is awesome. What are some examples so the people that work with you, I know you've published over 50 books in the last couple of years that you're helping other people do that. So what are some examples? And I don't know, like, obviously nonfiction books is what you do because that's going to build credibility and help the business. But I'm thinking, like, are they short books, medium, long books? Are stories? Are they curriculums? Like, what kind of things are you helping people create? And are there different kinds?
Yeah, it goes back to the 3 W's, right? There are different kinds. There's some that are 95 pages long. There's some that are 200 pages long. And the answer to that question, because I do get that question a lot, of how long my book should be. What size should my book be? And I always say, you never want to convince someone to do something that they are not already doing. I rather just go with the flow. And so I don't want to convince someone to read a certain book. So one perfect example of this would be a gentleman who wrote a book for Black fatherhood. And I asked him, well, what do you know? That's the who, Black fathers. What do you know about Black fathers? He said, well, Black fathers don't like reading. So I said, well, if they don't like reading, then we already know, do not write a 200-page book. They don't like reading. Why would you give them that? Like, why would you give them a book that feels like a boot camp to them? Yeah. Instead, write a book that's short. And here's the thing. People say, well, if it's short, then no one will think that it's credible. No, it's not that they won't think it's credible. If you say it's short up front, they no longer use that against you. And so what we did, we said, hey, we already know you don't have time. And so we wrote the straightforward guide to Black fatherhood. And so because we said straightforward, they already knew from the beginning, there's no BS here. There's no fluff. We're literally just selling you the meats and the potatoes. We're not coming and giving you extra sides and extra appetizers and all this extra stuff to fill you up so that when you get to the entree, whether it tastes good or not, it doesn't matter. No, we're giving you the straightforward guide. And so you always want to think about who are you speaking to, because that will dictate whether it's a short book, whether it's a long book. So if I'm writing something that are for people who are very educated, I know that they're used to reading books a certain length. And so if I write a book that's 50 pages, they will discredit the book. So now that book would need to be a little bit longer. But it always starts with, who is the book for? And what is it that I need that book to do for them and for my business? And so that's one of the biggest things. When you said something about curriculum, I always like telling people, try to put your book, especially if you're a consultant, a coach, an entrepreneur, a speaker, people are really buying your process. Find out what is your process and try to break it into 10 steps, 7 steps, maybe 3 sections. So maybe you have a beginning, middle, and an end to whatever your process is, 3 units that now can easily become 3 sessions, right? So I have like a leadership presentation that I'm going to turn into a book, and it's a 3-part presentation. So all I'm going to do is just call them 3 units of my book and now create subchapters for each of those 3 units. I literally would just transcribe my sessions and then already have the words for my book and then just add the things to go and make sure that there's smooth transitions in between them. So if you're looking at me like, oh, Geo, man, I don't have time to go and write a book. I say, well, when was the last time you spoke? Because the last time you spoke, you already started writing your book. You do not have to start from scratch. So go and transcribe that. I wrote my last book, Geo's Gems. It was about 40,000 words. I spoke it out for 6 hours. 6 hours of speaking, because I run my mouth, as you guys can see. And so I'm able to go ahead and speak 40,000 words in 6 hours. And now all of a sudden, it's a lot easier to go from 40,000 to 27,000 words. But it's a lot harder to go from 0 to 27,000. Like everybody wants to be the critic. I love having 40,000 words and being able to go and say, you're not going to make the book. You're not going to make the book. You're not going to make the book. Everybody do that. Like we love, you ever seen, Jake, tell me if this has ever happened with you, where you have someone ask you for feedback and you have to say something just to prove you did look at it? Like you're not going to say, you know what, it's perfect. the way it is, I don't see nothing to change. When you say that, it almost is internally, human psychology says you didn't read it. Like, how is it perfect? Because they don't believe that it's perfect. So literally, I love positioning people from a position of power to go from 40,000 to 27,000, because it's a lot easier to go and eliminate the 13,000 words that should not make the book.
Okay. And I imagine that would actually be a really important job that you play, like not only because of your marketing expertise, which we can just tell by listening to you, like how valuable that is, but then as somebody who's writing the book, you think that everything you say is genius. You need that second opinion to say, wait, that didn't actually serve your purpose or your audience. We can cut that, or we can trim that to a smaller sentence or paragraph. It doesn't have to be a chapter or something like that.
Very much so.
I can imagine after 50 plus books that you're just a good partner to have, like, for that process. So we're coming up on time. If anybody is listening to you and thinking like, dude, I need to work with him, first book done, Geo, like I need to contact him and see if he can help me with my book. Like, what do you recommend? Where can we go?
Yeah, no, cool. I got a free gift for everybody who's listening here. So I have this special report that I put together that talks about the 5 mistakes that all aspiring authors need to avoid if they're going to make money and an impact with their book. And these 5 mistakes, I promise you, is what's going to take you from amateur to professional as long as you avoid them. I'm literally telling you the 5 potholes that aspiring speakers continue to drive in that puts their book in a ditch. And I'm telling you how to not go into the ditches, right? How to drive around them. And so you can get that at firstbookdone.com/pod, P-O-D. That's a great, great resource for you guys. It'll help you to understand the thought process behind it. I'm not just, hey, let me just do it for you. I want you to understand what happens with it so that you can go and get your second book done, your third book done, your fourth book done, and then continue to be like John Maxwell, who's literally written like 70 something books on leadership. And literally all he's doing is going and seeing, hey, I let you read this book. You add a bunch of questions. And here's the cool thing, just for anyone who's listening to me. Your second book is going to be written by those who read your first one. So if you're like overwhelmed with like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine to write my second book, you don't even have to worry about the stress. They're literally going to tell you what to write next, which is the most amazing feeling in the world. Like my book, Geo's Gems, I didn't want to write it. Truth confession. However, people were like, Geo, you dropping all these gems. I need all of this in a book. I said, you would buy that if I just put all the things that I already said in one place? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll do it. And I literally just listened to what those who already were consuming what I was cooking. I just put it in a plate and said, here's what you asked for. And because they asked for it, they can't not say yes. They already said yes with their requests. And so this is super cool to go ahead and do it in that way. So again, that would be the best way to do it. If you're like, hey, Geo, listen, I've listened to you for the last 30, 40 minutes. I don't need the 5 mistakes. I need you to sit in the co-pilot seat with me. Then just go to firstbookdone.com. It'll literally tell you the whole layout of what the entire program entails, what is included, the bonuses, how I can literally walk with you hand by hand, foot by foot, to be able to make sure that your book is positioned to succeed from the beginning.
That sounds amazing. Dude, thank you for being so generous with all your expertise.
No doubt, man.
I feel like I'm getting ready for the next podcast episode with you because it's just so fun talking with you. You're fiery, you're spicy, like you're just like bam, 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 value. So it's really fun.
I could talk to you about this all day.
Right. Maybe we'll do that. 24-hour podcast episode.
24-hour podcast. It's never been done before. We're about to make history. We got to do like a telethon where we get a collection plate, slide in donations and all this stuff.
I love it, dude. Well, thank you so much. Everybody head over to firstbookdone.com, check out Geo and hit him up with whatever book needs you have. I'm probably going to start my next one with him. So we will see you on another episode.
Later, guys.